Stasis. You know, this is probably one of the creepier games I've played, and it's actually kind of relatively newer amongst the games I've played. I mean, it was released in August of 2015, and while I was actually working on coming up with my outline for how I was going to talk about this one, I found out there's more games in the franchise. Don't know if I want to play them though, because this one was well, let's be honest, this one was relatively creepy. I mean, it's a sci-fi horror game. It's point and click, usually old genre type of game. And it even has what they call an isometric view. I always get bothered by some of those games when they have that kind of viewpoint. Not complaining, this was nicely done, but man, is it freaking creepy. I mean, your basic story of this game is that you wake up on a ship, and as you progress, you find out they've been doing some rather, quote, illegal or unethical stuff. A lot of experiments. And, well, to get for some of the testing, they basically, quote, abduct people. And I do have to say this when it comes to science, a pure scientist doesn't necessarily think in ethics, but, well, I shouldn't say a pure scientist. I should say an unemotional scientist. They can sometimes go by the ends justify the means thinking. And I will, I can understand that. I can see both points of the argument where the what scientists do when they're testing stuff, it needs to be done ethically. And sometimes the testing even pushes ethics. Because you can't necessarily test for everything because some of the things would be, quote, unethical. And who in the world would do something unethical except a very unethical person? However, you play this game as John Marichik. John was basically, prior to this, en route with his family to some, I guess on a vacation or they were moving someplace, one of the two. But when John awakens, it's from a stasis pod on the Groom Lake, which is Kane Corporation's top secret deep space testing center. I mean, part of this comes from the history of the game that they have to do it out there due to, quote, eugenics wars that happened on Earth in the past. So right now he is dealing with stasis sickness or something like that, where he's got to get something in him to, quote, cure him of that. This is probably the relatively easiest part of this game. And once you do that, your next goal is to get off that deck. And in the course of figuring out how to get off that deck, which involves bypassing something. You will eventually meet up with or get contacted by someone else. Now, I have to say this on that. We are dealing with a very unethical company that's, dealing with some unethical stuff. And you start to suspect this because some of the clues to some of your puzzles you're going to find of how to get past something are basically found on PDAs. And in those PDAs, as you read them and as you read through everything on them, you get to have a feel of what was going on this ship. That various different experiments were going on. And in fact, you eventually get in touch with a woman. And I'm trying to think of her name. I'm going to have to look it up as I'm doing this. But when she contacts you, it's after you find what remains of her partner. Because her partner basically is the one who, quote, released everything out there. Now, the woman that gets in touch with John is named Tia. And she is your help to a degree. As you go through, she acts as your guide. Now, of course, she wants to... She has her own motive, which we'll discuss later. Now, of course, once you're able to get a tram up and running and leave the section of the ship you're in, because all sorts of creatures are running about, we get a contact from Dr. Milan. Now, Dr. Milan is the head doctor, or the head scientist, for all the Groom Lakes experiments. He also has a god complex. He, as you find out, comes to view humans as an inferior race. But he's always calculating. Now he's going to do everything to protect his work, which is some of the some of the problems that are on the Groom Lake. But what we find out is, first off, the ship went into a lockdown because of what started as a deadly dangerous fungal growth, which also comes from the experiments they're doing. And then Dr. Milan's own special project, which was supposed to be genetic super soldiers, they're running loose on the ship. In fact, they have taken to, quote, hunting the identification chips and that are installed in everybody. So you're trying to avoid, falling to them, falling to whatever else is in here. Your first stop after you leave that part of the ship where you started in is to the crew area. Yep, crew area. Where you start learning about the various details of the crew, possible relations, their history. Now they know that some of them know there's some very messed up stuff going on this ship. And some of them don't. They're living their lives, doing their jobs. So you sort of feel for these people that are, being victimized, that have gotten into this end of the world type scenario, fending for yourselves, trying to survive what turns out to be the end for them. But of course, as you're going through all this, you're picking up stuff that is supposed to help you get past some things. You've got to get into their club just so you can all get a dancer, a holographic dancer, which has to have some sort of weird, has some sort of neat technology in it for the time, because you can use it to activate a motion detector and keep it active. And of course, you have to find ways to move on to each new section. Now, eventually, you get to a section that is complete, that is where all the experiments are being done. So, needless to say, this is going to be on the deepest, very heavily protected with stuff. But this is also how you learn that while these things are tracking by the PDAs, and they have all these, not the PDAs, but the data things that are put into everybody, you have to get past all that. In order to get past that, you actually have to remove it. Yeah. This is where it starts to get disturbing. Really disturbing, I should say. I mean, honestly, you have to do surgery on yourself. And then you start running into genetically engineered bugs. I mean, as you go down, you come across a blockage caused by a lot of plant growth, which is due to the hydroponics section, where also these bugs are. Oh yeah, and when you see the mother of the biggest bug, it's like, even when John says to Tia, it's like, a bug. It's a big bug. How big is it? Big. I mean, let's face it, you can be literally cut in two by its pinchers, or whatever you want to call them. That's how big. But you need something from the bug. Because there's even more ferocious, littler bugs. But in order to get down to where Milan is, you literally have to get past. You got to take care of all the overgrowth. Of course, we're going to do it in a rather rather permanent way and time limiting way. I mean, honestly, you come across someone who's still alive. All they want is to die. I mean, they let their own illegal experiment get done, and it was like a child to them. Well, it was their child, so to speak. So now they were sort of forced to watch the child die. That is very emotionally trying on a person. And I know a little bit about, having to witness or seeing emotionally trying stuff. So you basically give them a flare, sort of have the things going on full force. Let's face it, oxygen's flammable. And if you light up a flare in a highly, where you've increased the oxygen, good deal, you're going to create an inferno, which destroys all the plant life, anything else that might be in the area if you haven't outrun it. But it clears you up to go down to the deck where all the real experiments are being done. And you discover Dr. Milan's creatures and how they're created. And God, I thought the Gola tanks in Dune were a disturbing idea. This was somewhat the same idea, but more disturbing. And of course, you take measures and destroy things and keep moving on. Discovering more and more atrocities, and then just as you're about to, you're trying to find your daughter who's still alive, but in the process, you end up getting caught by Dr. Milan. And he is pissed because you've been destroying his work. That's his big concern, so I'm going to take away something you value. You see, and then reveals that John's daughter is alive. John's daughter is, my God, she's just like a toddler. And Milan lets one of his creations in there. And John can do nothing. He can't do anything to help his daughter. He's basically forced to watch as the child gets slaughtered. Well, after that atrocity, and you quickly gather your resolve, Tia is now making her way because she can now get a trace on the mother, John's wife. And so she's heading over there. John manages to break free of where he is and moves on, getting past even more little obstacles, and even slaughtering one of these hybrid things and finding sort of their nest area. That was disturbing. And eventually making it to where there are escape pods. There are two escape pods. There's two stasis pods left. You have John, you have Dr. Milan, who's now holding Tia. And so you have to use your quick thinking to rescue Tia. And in the process, you are able to defeat Milan. The cold, heartless bastard gets sent into the cold, heartless void. In the end, he is, you then find out Tia's true motives. She's been opposed to Kane Corporation and wanted to bring the Groom Lake to life. To light, I should say. And all the information she needs has been secretly coded into John's wife's bone marrow. She is planning to use the escape pod to escape with John Merrick's wife, who is in stasis. It is now. She was only helping you as it helped her. It should be noted that because of John's actions to get rid of Milan, he is injured. So then he, in turn, takes steps to eliminate Tia. These steps damage the other stasis pod. So even if he would have wanted to, he cannot go with his wife. So he changes the destination where that life pod would go, and sends his wife out so that she can live. He dies on the Groom Lake. And then you have the final gut punch. That final gut punch being that something must have happened to her stasis pod prior. This is a very creepy game. If you like creepy games, I'm sure you will enjoy this. I got it as a freebie through GOG some time back. If you like it that much, I would recommend you to look into the rest of the games in the series. I personally don't think I'll pursue them. One, I didn't know of them, and after the gut punches that this one gave, I don't know if I'm going to want to tackle any more. It really does deliver on the creepy environment. I mean, I was I was using a walkthrough for most of it, and I'm getting creeped out. Even though I have a feeling of what might be coming. So this actually helps it. This makes it even more of a creep fest, and it's a plus for it. Would I recommend playing it? Yeah, actually, I do recommend playing it if you can handle creepy stuff. I mean, the self surgery part of the game, although it's pretty self explanatory, and I don't know what a failure will look like on that one. But, I mean, it's not at least trying to stick a needle in your eye for something, and if you fail, you get a whole machine inside of it instead, which is why I don't ever think I'll play Dead Space. Unless they remake 2 and take that section out. Then maybe I would. I do have my limits when it comes to creepy stuff. But this is definitely, if you like creepy games, you want to experience it, go ahead, get it. If it doesn't live up to your expectations story wise or anything else wise, don't get the whole series. But if you really get captivated by it, I mean, you could do like I do, and I try and look into certain things to find out more. But it's it's worth the experience. It is definitely worth the experience. And that's all I'm going to say about Stasis. I thank you if you've listened to the end. This is Rich Kale here on YouTube, Rich Gen X elsewhere. And I hope you've enjoyed hearing me go on about this game. And like I said, play the game, experience it for yourself. And as always, thank you for listening and have fun all. Bye.